Hey, it's hammer time. On today's show, it's a great honor to have Congressman John Shadegg with us. If there were a Hall of Fame for members of Congress, John Shadegg would be in that Hall of Fame.
Well, that's very kind of you. I appreciate it.
You're part of really one of the most important families in Arizona, and I want to start with the best political, and you knew I'm going to go here, I have to. The best political book I've ever read in my life was written by your dad, How to Win an Election, I think 1964. Still the gold standard.
It's absolutely, I think, the gold standard. I've toyed with rewriting it, and given that some thought, I've never actually motivated myself to do it yet. Although my son Stephen and I now are talking about jointly rewriting it, I'd have to bring it from my dad's generation through my generation and into the current generation, because it's written with reference to the technology of that era, but elections are about people and about what motivates people and who participates in elections and when they decide. And so the basic themes of the book haven't changed.
In 1994, that's when you first ran successfully for Congress. And we'd just love to maybe just give a little bit of a background of what motivated you. And I know you had a distinguished career in the AG's office, and you did a lot of things before that point of running for the United States Congress.
Years before 1994, I had become involved in politics. I'd run a couple of campaigns on my own, one for a county supervisor by the name of Holly Atkinson, who had worked for Governor Jack Williams. And then I decided to go off and run some campaigns. I went to Colorado and ran a campaign for a gentleman leaving the state legislature and running for the U.S. House. Well, I didn't want to let myself get into the category of always a campaign manager, never a candidate. So I kind of vowed at the end of that campaign never to, not the 94 campaign, this was earlier, vowed never to work on a campaign again. In 1994, I could see that John Kyle was going to challenge Dennis D. conceding for the Senate, which, as you point out, he did. We were the underdog in a three-way race. People forget that it was a three-way race, but kind of that was the beginning of my Washington career.
Well, this was 40 years that Democrats had controlled the House. I'll just say, as I was in my 20s at the time, I honestly thought at that point I would never in my lifetime, and I was planning to stay alive for a while, would ever see a Republican House of Representatives. Maybe a U.S. Senate again, but not a House. Could you maybe explain how the ideas helped change the direction of the country?
Well, we had been, as you point out, in the minority for 40 years, and a lot of the credit goes to the Republicans who were there. Largely it goes to Newt Gingrich himself, to some degree others that helped him, but he had a vision, which was that we could do better for America than what we were doing under the Democrats. Term limits, balancing the budget, just a whole series of ideas. And in reality, they excited the people. And I think the ideas that Newt put forward helped us win over the undecided voters who were concerned about the size of the deficit and the debt, as they should be today. And we balanced the budget, I think, for 2 or 3 years following taking the majority. So it was an idea campaign. There's no doubt about that. Unfortunately, I got to Congress and discovered that Congress itself isn't so much driven by ideas.
You had the ability to explain why these policy changes, whether it's welfare reform, balancing the budget, tax reform, were important. Maybe if you could talk about your role to get the country back on track.
Number one, as a group, we had an agenda. We wanted to accomplish things like balancing the budget and making the government accountable. We wanted to reduce spending. So we had an agenda. Whenever our class was upset with where leadership was going, on those few occasions, for example, when they would propose not to enact a provision of the Contract with America, they'd come to me and say, Shadegg, you're the guy, you go fight with Dick Armey, or you go fight with Newt Gingrich and tell them that our class won't stand for it.
There's a lot going on in trade right now. How would you counsel Congress and the executive to move forward? I mean, Arizona's a border state. There's a lot of issues wrapped up into this. We just love your thoughts on where we should be going as a country.
I believe that genuine free trade is the best policy for all nations. We don't need a trade war. That's not going to benefit our country. And to the extent we pursue that policy, that's going to be a problem. By the same token, that doesn't mean all existing trade policies are good or shouldn't be examined. So to some degree, I think the president has the right idea. Now, whether or not he is pursuing it in a way that will result in better trade policies for the average American without producing higher prices for imported goods and harming that same average American, I don't know. I can't see the end, and I'm not enough of an expert. The degree to which President Trump has improved the economy is understated, underappreciated, and underrealized. The economy is already running much better and doing much more for everyone. That's all because of the success he had in year one on regulatory reform. The thing he then did was tax reform, which was hugely successful. The only question now is, are we getting trade policy right so that it doesn't undo all of the good that has been accomplished with regulatory reform and tax reform?
And Congressman, we were all, not just in Arizona, but in the United States, lucky that you were part of the permanent history of the greatest country to ever exist. Congressman John Shadegg, thank you.
Appreciate it.